If I click on Keypair, and if you look at these ones, you may notice that this is the one that we are always using. And you may forget, but during the creation of EC2 instance, if I go again through the creation of EC2 instances and hit next, go fast, just try to launch our EC2 instance, it asks for creating an SSH key for us, right? In here, this is the place that actually we can create or choose our SSH key for the authentication purposes. And usually we select from this drop down and we have a bunch of SSH keys, and this one is the one that we usually use. But we actually can create a new SSH or key pair. And I'm going to create a new one, for example, here, and give it a name, demo. If I click download Keypair, then it's going to download a file called demo.pem. You can see it down here at the bottom of left side of the browser. It is actually on my computer right now. It's downloaded this file to my download directory. If I go to my download directory, we can see that this demo file is now here. And if I click a launch instance, it's going to launch the instance and use this key pair for the authentication purposes. And this key pair, this one, the one with .pem file, this is the private key, and the public key, it's going to be inside the EC2 instance. So AWS is going to seed the public key inside the EC2 instance, and it will give us the private key PEM file. Then we can use this private key to authenticate and to SSH to our EC2 instance, or if it's a Microsoft or if it's a Windows operating system, we can use this private key for decrypt the administrator password to be able to see it and then start RDPing to our EC2 instance. Anyway, if I even hit cancel here, I'm not going to launch an EC2 instance. I can go back. Let's hit cancel here. I can go back to Keypairs, and you can see that now I have the demo Keypair here. Even I didn't create any EC2 instance, but because I hit download and I got this demo.pem file, then I have this demo key here. So whatever you're seeing here, it means that someone created a Keypair and downloaded the private key. These are the public keys, and if you can see their fingerprints on the AWS. You need the private key to be able to work with these Keypairs here. What we can do during the creation of EC2 instances, or whenever we need authentication, we can create a Keypair, and at that moment AWS is going to give us the private key, like this PEM file. And we can do it also from here. I can create Keypair here, give it a name here, for example demo1, and hit create, and look at here, I got the private key right now from here, and I got the public key inside the AWS. And whenever let's say if I want to spin up another EC2 instance, I can choose demo1 for the Keypair, and I can use this .pem file for authentication. And if I want to open this file, let's open this one of these files, doesn't really matter. I'm going to open it with one of my text editors. This is the format of a private key. It starts with begin RSA private key and end with the end RSA private key. This is the private key that we can start using it. Most of the time, basic users, they just create key pairs for the authentication and they start using these ones from the AWS. But when you usually go through the advanced settings, most of the time you have the key pair, you have the key pairs on your computer, on your laptops, on-prem, somewhere in your environment or in your company, and you want actually to use those keys for authentication inside the AWS. So for doing this, then probably you have the public key and private key on your laptop, and you want to actually import the public key to the AWS, and you can see it here, and then you can start using the private key which is on your computer, and you can use this. For testing this one, I'm going to create a public key and private key pretty fast on my laptop, and I try to import the public key to the AWS to see how it works. So for doing this, I'm going to open a terminal, and I am using a Mac right now. It's going to be the same thing for any Linux machines, and if you are using Microsoft, you have to install a terminal or bash shell, for example, in order to be able to use it, but the idea is the same thing. So what I'm going to do is, right now I am in the users ITrepo directory, and if I hit ls, I have a bunch of folders here, and I have a key, a private key actually, ITrepo linux-key.pem, which is private key of this one. So I don't want to use that one, I want to create a new one. So there's a command in all the Linux machines, and also it works in the Mac devices, and it's called SSH key gen for key generation. You can use this one, and you can use -t for the type of the protocol that you want to use, RSA, and -C for any comments. I put demo, for example, 2 here. So with this command, if I hit enter, we can create two files, and it's saying generating public key and private key RSA key pair for us on my laptop. It says where you want to save it, and by default it try to save it on or a home directory on a hidden folder called .ssh, and this is the file for private key. I don't want to save it here. I just want to save it in the current location in the directory that we were. So I put Masoud _RSA for the private key and hit enter, and you can put a password on this one and actually encrypt your private key for more security. In order, let's say someone break into your laptop, then they can use this private key for authentication to any servers, right? It's easy. So you can put a password and encrypt this file for make it harder. I'm not going to put any password. I just put enter here, so no password. Again, I'm hitting enter without any password, and basically it creates it's going to create two files for me. One of them is Masoud RSA, this is the private key, and one of them is the public key, which is Masoud _RSA.pub for the public key. If I run ls here, now I can see both of these files here, Masoud RSA and Masoud RSA.pub. So these are my key pairs on my laptop, and I want to use these ones for any authentication purposes. What I can do is actually I can keep this one because this is the private key. It should be on my laptop and keep it in a secure location, but I can import this one into the AWS, and then I can use this one for any authentications for the future purposes. So let's go and do this. Here we can hit import key pair, and local public key, we can select this one, and I can actually go to my home directory, which I'm in my home directory right now, and I can select the public file, hit open, and it is actually loading the content of the file here, give it a name, and hit import. So in this case, now look here, I have my SSH key pair here inside the AWS, and I have my private key on my laptop right now here. So it's the same idea like creating a key pair and at that moment downloading the private key. In this case, if I'm going to create any instances, so let's do this again fast. If I go through the creation of any EC2 instances during the launch, if I open this dropdown, now I have the Masoud RSA. And I can select this one and launch the instance, and I can use actually the private key that is currently on my laptop. So this was the SSH and key pairs. Another one, and the last option here is network interfaces, and this one is pretty easy. This one is actually showing all of the network interfaces in our VPC that currently we are using. So we are using 3 network interfaces, and the reason is that we have 3 EC2 instances. These 3, 2 of them are stopped and 1 of them is running. Then the rest are terminated, so we are not using them. So these 3 network interfaces are associated with those 3 EC2 instances, and because 1 of them is running, actually this one has a public IP address. The rest they have private IP addresses, and they're all in use. If we right click on these ones, we can manage IP addresses on them, so we can assign new IP address, for example, or reassign the IP addresses on them. We can associate addresses if we like, so there is a associate to private IP address drop down here, and we can reassociate any IP addresses, and if there is any address available, we can use those addresses. And there are a bunch of options. For example, for the termination behavior, we can change the security groups and so many options. But basically, you should bear in your mind that whenever you're assigning any security group to your EC2 instances, basically you are assigning that security group to your network cards. And here you can see all the details related to your network cards. And that's why if you go back to your EC2 instances and you want to change any security groups, the security group is actually part of the networking. And some people are looking for most of the time for the security groups, but you have to be aware that whenever you're changing any security groups, you are actually assigning or reassigning the security group to the network interface of that EC2 instance. And here we have also attached network interfaces, and we don't have anyone available, right? If I go back to my network interface, I can create a new network interface, and I can give it a name, for example, test. I can put it in one of the availability zones, and the IP address could be auto-assigned, and we can select one of these security groups, and we can create this test network interface. And it is available, right? It's not in use. And I can go back to my EC2 instance, and I can basically select one of these EC2 instances, and I can attach a network interface to it. But the reason that I'm getting an error is because this one is not in that availability zone. If I can't remember which availability zone it was. I guess it was the first one, right? So if I'm going to this first one and try to attach it, now I can see that network interface, and I can attach it to this EC2 instance. So it's going to take some time, and now this EC2 instance, it has 2 network interfaces. So that was it actually. In this section, I would like to talk about this network and security groups, and I think this is going to be a useful video for you and it's going to help you understand what are these settings here. Thank you very much, and if you don't have any questions, I'll see you in the next module.